We're back out here at the Big Lake, and today we're talking about some of my favorite tips and cheats for Texas rigs, which are perfect for this time of year. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. We got him. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, I'm recording. Stay down, it's coming up. Oh, that's a giant, hun. That's a big one. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and today it's all about Texas rigs. Probably one of the most effective ways of catching all types of bass that has ever been created. Whether you're fishing spotted bass, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, a Texas rig soft plastic just works. It's probably one of my favorite types of fishing, right up there along with jigs. And in the wintertime, they can be especially effective, although they often get overshadowed by things such as jerkbaits, Ned rigs, drop shots, finesse jigs, things that you can sit on the bottom and just hold there and wait for those ultra cold bass to come to you. And I'm telling you, a Texas rig can be super effective right now. Now, for those of you who don't know, who are new to the channel, and I've been asked this several times before, what exactly is a Texas rig? So let me go over that real quick. It's a way of rigging a soft plastic bait so that it's completely weedless, and it's great especially for bank anglers. All you need is a soft plastic. In this case, I've got a stick bait, but it can work with pretty much anything. It can work with a crawl, it can work with a grub, it can work with a fluke. And in this case, I've got a 3/0 EWG hook, but it can be a worm hook, it can be a regular type of hook. It doesn't matter. These were just made for doing Texas rigs, so they're pretty easy to use, especially for beginners. Now, the Texas rig of bait, all you've got to do is just poke it through right there, and then pop that top out, right? See how that tip came out like that? Slide it around and then twist your hook so that it faces this way. Pull that worm up on that shank right there, and then once you get that done, all you have to do is make sure that you're straight and poke your hook through like that, and then pull like this. You see how that is right there? And then we've got a nice, perfectly weedless presentation. This can go through some of the roughest stuff and it'll be just fine. And when you go to set that hook, that worm will pop out of the way, that hook is exposed, and you can feel free to hook set that fish. Although when it comes to hook setting on a Texas rig, I tend to do so with some force. So those are the basics of what a Texas rig is. Super simple. You can do it with different types of hooks. You can do it with different types of baits. Now we're going to get into the different types of rod setups, and it's really very simple. We're going to start at the very beginning, and that is a weightless Texas rig, right? You guys have seen me do this before. We've got a soft plastic jerkbait here. It can be anything. It can be a weightless crawl. It can be a weightless stick bait. It can be whatever you want. But in this case, we have a weightless soft plastic jerkbait or a fluke. And you can see it's rigged the same way that I did the worm. It's rigged to be weedless. And the great thing about this is, believe it or not, this will cast quite a ways, even though it's weightless. Now, where am I fishing a weightless Texas rig? Well, I'm fishing this close to the bank. I'm fishing this in shallow water. Now, each type of bait will fall differently. This fluke glides, especially when you twitch it and you pop it. You can also use something like this stick bait. But remember, this is going to have a different type of fall, especially considering the hook that you have. A heavier hook is going to add more weight, and it's going to be a heavier type of fall. But you can also do something like your creature bait, like this Berkeley Pit Boss. It works great on a weightless Texas rig, but This is going to be a heavier presentation, but it's still going to kind of fall and fan out with these arms, these little flappers kind of flapping as they go down. It's great up against the bank. For bank anglers, this is going to be your bread and butter. A weightless Texas rig presentation will be your bread and butter. Now, if I'm fishing heavy vegetation, obviously I'm going to be using braid because, like we've talked about before, braid saws through that vegetation and helps you bring your bait back to the boat. Doesn't work so good when it comes to timber because it has a tendency to saw into that timber, and you can oftentimes get stuck. It's not your hook that's getting stuck, it's your line that's getting buried in there. So be mindful of that. So if you're close to the bank, you've got some shallow water that you want to work, a weightless Texas rig can be great. It works around vegetation, it works around structure such as docks, such as rock piles, such as laydowns. This is an effective, one of the most effective presentations that can be done, especially right now in the wintertime. So if you're a bank angler, and even if you're fishing from the boat and you're looking for something different to fortify your fishing arsenal, don't forget the Texas rig. You guys know how wonderful a weightless Texas rig can be. I can hear you in the comment section now. You're saying, lowbrow, everybody knows all this stuff. This is basic stuff. You said you had some tips and cheats for us. And I do. And we're going to start with the hooks that you use and why a lot of you use the wrong hook. See, something like this right here. You see how it's a weighted hook, but it's got that little tab that comes past the shank there? These things drive me crazy, and I never use them because, well, that little, you see how it almost like, makes a number 4 right there, or even like that if it's not backwards. You see how that is? You see how it makes like that? Well, that grabs vegetation, that grabs branches, that grabs weeds. It acts like little pincers, and it just grabs things. So if you have a weighted type of hook, you don't want something that's got that little bulbous part sticking out. Also, it makes rigging the worm exceptionally arduous. I hate trying to rig a plastic bait on these things. I'm not licking lead, okay? I'm not going to try to wet lead with my mouth to get it to slide over there. So that is going right out the window. So these types of hooks, avoid them if you can. They're just a pain. They end up ruining your plastic. They end up stretching it out, and you don't get but one use out of them, or you'll end up breaking plastics. But like I said, the worst part is, that little bulbous part right there is just going to catch trash. An alternative that I use, and it's not weighted, but something that I do like, are these Mustad KVD hooks, these keeper hooks. You see how that's kind of got a rounded, pointy shape. What this does is that worm sits right in that cradle right there, or whatever bait sits right in that cradle, and it keeps that worm, keeps that bait right where it's at. Whenever you're doing a hook set, whenever you're working the bait, it doesn't keep flopping down, which, a lot of guys will put a bobber stop there. And I tell you what, I'm not able to do that. My hands just don't work that way anymore. So something like this works great for me. These are the KVD Mustad hooks, and they've got the little bait keeper on them. These things are what I use. This is what works great for me. So like I said, that's a little cheat that I use. It's a little trick that I use. I've got these in 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, and I love these things. Plus, obviously it's going to be plenty sharp. It's a Mustad hook. They're not going to be super expensive. But another thing that we can do whenever we're working a Texas rig is, they don't have to be the giants, right? You can use a small little 4-inch worm like this, and you can pare down your gear like, this tiny little 1/0 worm hook, or this tiny little 1/0 EWG. Now, this is something that I also use for a Waco rig, so I have plenty of these on hand. But even if I'm working a weightless Texas rig, say I want to be ultra finessey with it, almost like I'm doing a wacky rig, and I want something like this for a smaller worm, and I can work it along banks up under flooded brush, almost in places that I'm working a wacky rig. But I don't want the added weight of a Waco rig. I want to do something that's completely finesse. So don't be afraid to go down to a smaller size worm. The fish, a lot of times, even big bass. The biggest bass that I caught on a soft plastic last year, on a soft plastic worm in 2023, I caught on a 4-inch, okay? And that bass was just shy of 7 pounds. I caught it on a light wire hook, and I caught it on a small, 4-inch Senko. So think about that. Sometimes going lighter is the key. That can be the ticket. Sometimes, the glint off of that wire, the glint of the sun off of your hook, it can turn those bass off. And maybe sometimes you need to remove that by going with something smaller. Maybe go with a black colored hook, whatever. Sometimes those bass are very particular about what it is they want to bite. Sometimes they just want something smaller, But I've got a couple more tips that I want to show you that I really think you're going to like. All right, I've got one last little cheat for you, but there's a lot to it. So let's take a look at it. Right? Now, it may look like an ordinary Texas rig, but there's a lot going on here. First of all, you see that I do have a bobber stop or a weight stop on this, which pegs that weight. But what I've done here is I've added a couple of glass beads, and you can hear that gives it just a little bit of rattle, a little bit of clack. And if you're fishing stained water or if you're fishing some sluggish fish, that can help with some really nice attraction power. Especially, like I said, whenever those fish are in stained water, or whenever sometimes they don't feel like maybe committing to that bait, maybe just a little bit of extra noise will, convince them to go ahead and commit. But another thing that I've done is I've added a snap ring right there. You see where that snap ring is? And that acts almost like a wobble head, right? Now, a wobble head can be a great bait, but the problem with them is they rarely come in a bullet head type of shape. Normally, they're in a football type of head. And that's great. A football head is a great thing, especially on a wobble head. But those get gummed up. A football jig, a football head jig in heavy vegetation with the way the line tie is and that wide head, they're going to get gummed up. So if you're fishing heavy vegetation, if you're fishing, a place that's got some hydrilla, that's got some milfoil, got some grass or whatever, this is a great alternative. That little split ring right there, will give you all that extra movement, that angled movement that you like, especially, from something like a wobblehead jig, but without gumming up every single time you try to bring it through the grass. Now you notice I've got the bullet stop right up here just a little bit, and that allows that bait, it allows that weight to go up and down and clack just a little bit. This right here, this is my secret weapon whenever I've just got to get a bite. On those super tough days when things are not working out so well and I know those fish are there, I can drag this very slowly through there. Even still, I'm giving it a lot of dead sticks, but with the way that head angles, I'm allowed to get it into better positions for those bass, to present it to them so it can be a better tasty morsel. And I'm telling you, whenever I use that goofy setup, when I use that crazy setup, I get some big bites. That is my secret weapon. That's my cheat on the days when fishing is the hardest. And I've come up, with some really great bites on this thing. So give it a try. I know you're going to love it. There you have it. Some of my favorite cheats and tips for Texas rigging that you can add to your arsenal for wintertime fishing. I know you're going to love them because it's going to give those fish just a little bit something different to look at. And like we always say, show them something different. That's how you stand out against the background and against other anglers. And that's how you're able to get those tough bites whenever you really just got to have a bite. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.